Good morning. This is Kenneth and Heather with the Advancing Equity Coalition. Here to talk about something that is already popping up in the news. I'm sure folks have heard a little bit about it, which are the attack on the protections for educators of color and Indigenous teachers in Minneapolis public schools. Um, this is really frustrating. This is a really, really hard moment. Um, and this is a moment to have resolve, to fight for the things that we believe in. Even though we just finished that fight, it's time to come back at it again because it matters too much for students of color and Indigenous students in Minneapolis public schools. And really it matters to all students. All students benefit from a more diverse base of teachers. And so, Heather, when this news came out, what were you thinking?
Initially, the my first thought was just thinking about how my children who entered Minneapolis public schools as third graders, our hope was that they would have a more diverse experience, that they would have teachers that look like them as students of color. They hadn't had that or been able to experience that in the suburbs, in a whiter suburb. And yet here they are going into their freshman year and they still have not experienced that. They've experienced much more diversity in student body, much more diversity in thinking and in education and experiences. But for my children and for many children in our district, if you go into some of our strongest schools in Minneapolis public schools, you will still see 80% or more of our teachers that are white and look like me. And we know that having one teacher of color or indigenous teacher can change a child's trajectory. We know that this data, even though the right wing just picked this up right now, right? None of this information or story or reality for students of color and indigenous students is new, right?
Right. So let's set the record straight. In March last year, after a really hard conversation that this city had to have again about race, we actually came out of it with a change, which is different for our city. We said that we were going to actively protect our educators of color and our underrepresented educators from any budget cuts moving forward, right? And so this was settled back in March. Since then, it's been uncontroversial. Everybody's touted this as a victory. Everybody's been happy about it. This is not something that has been an issue or a concern for this city. All of a sudden, last week, one small right wing blog, thought, fart, I don't know, decided that they were going to dig into this and attack it. It got picked up by Fox News, got picked up by other media outlets, and now has become a thing, which then resulted in a lawsuit that was then filed on Monday. Again, to set this record straight, our 80% white union voted to approve this provision in their own contract, right? So this has not been controversial up until this point. It's still not controversial. This is just an opportunity for the right wing to continue to take shots at Minneapolis, to continue to
Mm-hmm.
tell this world, try to tell the world how terrible Minneapolis is when this is something that we're so proud of as a city. And so I think this is an opportunity for us to tell the story one more time and with the world watching around why these protections are important, why teachers of color and indigenous educators are so important to our students and to our community and to our city, and why we did want to protect them and why we want them to stay in our buildings, why we don't want them to continue to experience instability as the state refuses to fund public education. Like that's the only reason why we're in this position is Minneapolis Public Schools is staring down the barrel of very, very a difficult financial position and is going to have to make hard decisions, which include a staff reduction potentially. And so, you know, I, as Heather talks about, why it was important for her to have her kids go to Minneapolis public schools, I think about my own experience as a student and how growing up, I didn't have any educators of color until college. And I didn't even understand the importance of it until I had that educator of color
Mm.
in college, who I have continued to call back on every so often after college to continue to talk about, different things, how, and I just can't overstate the importance of this provision. And we get to tell that story again. We get to defend the work that we already did together. And this is an opportunity to do so. And so we're not going to take this lying down. We're going to do this. And we're going to fight as hard as we can. And we're going to tell the world who now is watching around why this is so important to this city in this moment. So I hope you all are ready for this, because we're going to be calling on you. We need you. We cannot do this alone. We didn't do this alone before. We can't do this alone again. So thank you all for being in this fight, and let's do it.
Bye.